Hello everyone, welcome back to Sober is Dope. In this episode, I'm going to give you guys some insights on how I stay sober, how I stopped drinking, and how I found success in recovery. Stay tuned. Welcome to Sober is Dope. I'm Pop Buchanan, the host of the Sober is Dope podcast. God bless everyone today. Today, what I want to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, is how I got sober. This is a real straightforward episode, so I want to keep it concise. But first thing first, the first thing I did to find my sobriety and get on my road to recovery was getting on my knees and giving my life back to God and praying. And by doing this, that gesture of me hitting the ground and praying and giving my life to God and admitting that I was powerless, and this was real. At the height of my addiction, I truly was powerless over alcohol, and I was so tired of it. So for ladies and gentlemen, it didn't matter if I believed in God. It didn't matter. It got to a point where I was at such a low place that I just literally had to relinquish my power. I had to release myself from carrying this burden of addiction, and I just had to admit it to a higher power, right? And at that time, I just reached out. I said, God, if you're out there, if you believe, if you could hear me, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm captured and something dark has me. And by doing so, I was able to open myself up to really hear my heart and to hear a higher calling and to get some wise direction on where I needed to go spiritually. And that was the first thing. That started with me making a decision. Once I got on my knees, I was making a decision both publicly and personally that I was ready to commit my life to recovery, and I was officially tired of the trap and the snare of addiction. I was just so frustrated at that point. So I had no more cards to play and no more games to play, ladies and gentlemen. And this is really honest of me, because it was just, we get to a point where we either be true to ourselves or we lie to ourselves. And some people, in lying, they kill themselves. They wind up dying in rock bottom or even before they get to rock bottom because they didn't want to take the steps. And part of that is just really being real with yourself and being honest with yourself. If you are at your wit's end and alcohol and drugs have become so problematic that it brings you to such a low place, really find your humility, get on your knees, pray, redirect your energy towards recovery, and throw that Hail Mary for the creative miracle. So important. The next thing that I did was I was open to all things positive that led me to my recovery. So when my prayer was answered and I went to a detox place, I stayed there for 5 days until they told me I had to leave, and I said I don't want to leave. And what's the next step? The next step was rehab. So I really went into rehab with the idea that I want to stay here and I want to commit myself to a long-term recovery plan because I really want success. So I stayed 9 months to a year in an outpatient rehab, but I stayed in an inpatient dorm where I had to literally take urine tests and blood tests every week just to make sure I was maintaining my recovery. And that was accompanied by peer groups, Alcoholics Anonymous, a doctor, counselor, psychiatrist, and things like that. So don't rule out recovery centers and don't rule out rehab. Rehab can make the big difference in your recovery. The next thing I used to find success in my recovery and how I stopped drinking was I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. And in addition to rehab and the groups and everything, Alcoholics Anonymous was a place where I could just go and really communicate everything that I wanted to communicate about my addiction to a safe group of people. And I could also see other people, how they found success in recovery. So sometimes you hear, if you really want to be successful, you must hang with successful people. You must listen to successful people and mirror yourself after successful people. And that's what AA helped me with. I was able to see these men and women who had 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of success in their recovery talk about their process and explain it. And that really put things in perspective. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that I wasn't alone in my addiction. I was able to identify with someone outside of myself and say, that's what I want for myself. So don't rule out peer groups, 12 steps, systems, and Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. It can make a big difference. The next thing that I did to find success in my recovery was I started surrounding myself with people that were positive influences, and I let all my friends and family know exactly what was going on so they could be supportive. So I let my friends know, hey, I want to hang out, but we can't hang out. I don't want to be around alcohol. I don't want to go to a club. Let's just go hang out. Let's just get something to eat. I changed my behaviors, and I put everyone on notice that I'm a different person and I'm real serious and I want to be committed. So life started to work on my own terms. I became a leader in my life and not a follower. I set the tone. I set the stage. I started rewriting my story, and I was setting the rules. So therefore, no one else was responsible for bringing me outside of my recovery or sobriety. I took 100% ownership, and I wrote the narrative. And in that way, I was able to protect my heart, my mind, body, spirit, but most importantly, my recovery. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, recovery is a lifetime thing. So December 15th, 2020 is going to make 8 years for me. So I'm 7.5 years sober today, but every day I treat it like a new day in my recovery. I don't get cocky. I remember the darkness. So always remember the darkness. Remember those dark days. Because once you get some time under your belt, you're going to feel so comfortable. You're going to start to play with the idea that maybe you could have a drink. Alcohol is insidious. It'll play with your mind. So you have to stay one step ahead of your addiction by remembering where you came from. Remember the darkness so you can embrace the light and have fun in your recovery. So that's some tips on how I found my recovery from alcohol and how I was able to find success in my recovery and my sobriety. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Sober is Dope. I'm Pop Buchanan. I love you all. Good luck on your journey, and I'll catch you on the other side. Peace.